Hey everybody, welcome to the show. And we're going to do this week's Asian soup. We're a day late this week, but that really shouldn't matter, especially over the course of time. Now, we're not actually going to do a soup technically. We're going to do a stew. It's the same sort of thing, though. It is the same bao long bouillon that we've been using. This is Kho Chay, or Kho Chay. I'm not sure how to pronounce the Vietnamese, of course, but this is a vegetarian stew, as I understand it. The translation that I got when we tried to look it up was vegetarian warehouse, but it's actually a vegetarian stew. And typically for the protein in this, what I've seen online is that they use tofu. Now, Beverly doesn't care much for the taste of tofu. I like it well enough, but I'm not a big fan of all vegetarian dishes to start with. So we've made a little substitution. Now, first thing I did, of course, here is I went ahead and I have dissolved my cubes. Now, instead of putting this in a larger quantity of water, I only used a little over a cup of water here, and I dissolved all 4 cubes in it because this is actually going to be a marinade. Now, the marinade is going to have my stew components in this Ziploc bag, and you put it in there and put in the marinade and rustle it around, and for about 15 minutes let it set to kind of soak in. Once that's done, you go ahead and you put it in the kettle and stew it until it is done. So, depending on what you're stewing. Now, you saw we got some taters and some carrot and some onion. Now, what I've decided to use as a substitute for the tofu, this is going to be kind of like a beef stew, only I got veal. So it's just before a couple of weeks before Easter while I'm making this, and veal is readily available, not terribly expensive, so although not incredibly cheap either. So this was already cubed for stewing. I like veal. I don't get it very often. So in place of the tofu, I'm going to use veal so I don't have this vegetarian dish, and so that we have a protein in there that Beverly would enjoy. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cube up my vegetables, and then I'm going to put this all together in the bag. So when I get these cubed up, we'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my vegetables all cubed up, ready to go. I'm going to put them in the bag with the marinade that it's already dissolved, so we're good to go. And I tasted the bouillon solution, the marinade. About the closest explanation I can give you for this particular one. Okay, we've got some chopped onions here, and some chopped carrots, and some chopped potatoes. Anyway, the closest I can come on that bouillon is it's got kind of a beef kind of a flavor about it. It tastes like a beef soup. So beef or veal is going to go very nicely in there. And I'm probably going to get the dickens from my wife because I didn't put the meat in first. She likes to put the meat in first, but I feel confident that the marinade's going to get all over everything. So, and mostly I wanted to get this stuff out of my way off the counter. So there's our taters. This is probably more than the 2 of us can eat. And it was only 4 small potatoes, 1 carrot, and half an onion. So it is, however, like I said, it's just before Easter, but it is cold out tonight. So this is a relatively hearty meal. So our timing fell out pretty good. And as I said, I've got some veal here. So just pop that open. Very nice. Beautiful, nice chunks of veal. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick those in here. Veal, sort of a, I guess, traditional cuisine around Easter time. Much like lamb, often considered a traditional treat. All right. So then This is the tricky part. We're going to see if I can do this without spilling it. Get all that nice seasoned goodness in there. And I'll try to get as much of the air out as I can. Now just working my marinade around inside of this so that it gets on everything. And I was admonished to put this in a bowl to let it set, a wide flat bowl, just in case the bag had a little boo-boo. So, anyway, we went ahead. I usually, if you've been watching this episode, the series rather, I use 3 of the 4 cubes that come in these little boxes. Today I decided to use all 4 because this was a stew, and I thought that it might be nice to have a little more of the seasoning infused everything. Process pretty much the same though. Once this is done, we're going to put it in our cast iron kettle, because y'all know how much I like cast iron. And then you add the rest of the water. So another 5 cups of water roughly. And just put it in there, turn it on low, and let it stew. And now, I had a number of people that were asking about getting, some better camera angles and this and that so they could see what we were doing. And you may have noticed that we have gone to the trouble of assembling and employing or deploying the jib crane. Also, I've mounted the GoPro over here, so we're going to have the kettle cam. Won't be a lot of footage from that, but we'll be able to see how this thing's doing periodically. So this is going to sit for about 15 minutes. I'm going to pull that out, put it in the kettle, put the rest of the water on, and we'll get it cooking. And we'll be right back. Okay, our 15 minutes is up. Our Kho Chay beef veal stew is all marinated. I took the liberty while we were on hiatus there to go ahead and get the rest of our other 5 cups of water in here and start heating it. It's not quite on a boil. There's a few bubbles in the bottom. And I got our kettle cam running. So now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put all of this into the remaining water. Okay. And grab a fresh wooden spoon. Give that a little stir around. I'm hoping that this the GoPro is picking it up pretty good here. You can see it's got, that color of beef bouillon. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that up to medium to bring it up to temperature. And then I'll probably back it down in order to be able to, to stew it slowly. I mean, I don't want it to boil real hard, but I do want to bring it up to temperature. And that is that. So that should be up to temp in just a few minutes, because this is a pretty decent gas range and cast iron transmits the heat real well. So we'll take a look inside in just a minute, and then when it's done. Okay, so I've got it up to temperature. I cranked the heat up to bring it up to a boil. And it's at a good rolling boil right now, but again, I don't want to keep it at that. So I'm going to crank that heat back down to, I don't know, between medium and low, so medium-low, or low. Very definitely a beef-flavored smell about this particular bouillon. Now, again, I know this is not I'm not making it a traditional vegetarian stew, but the whole object, if you remember when I started this series, was to try each of these flavors of these bouillons. Now, I'm going to cook this for about 45 minutes. I think that'll be long enough to get everything done through. This is kind of like cooking it in a pressure cooker, because this is a cast iron kettle, got a very heavy lid. It's going to help hold all of that steam in, keep the pressure up. So if you're cooking this in a lighter pot, obviously you're going to want to cook it maybe a little longer, but you cook it until it is done. So, but I do know, I talked to one of my friends whose father used to make dish like this. It wasn't Kho Chay, but it was a veal stew, and he did it in a pressure cooker. So obviously it would cook in about 30 minutes. But this should cook in about 45 minutes, so that's what I'm going to set my timer for. And we'll come back and take a look at it as it's starting to get all nice and stewy goodness. So we'll be right back. Our 45 minutes is up, and let's take a look in the kettle. So even turned all the way down, you see it's got a good boil going, more than probably I would like for stew, but it seems to be doing good. Carrots are all cooked, potatoes are cooked, meat seems to be cooked nice. So as you can see, it's kind of a, it's still a soup, even though it's called a stew. It is still sort of a soup. So we didn't really deviate too much from the intent of the original series when we went ahead and made a stew. So I don't know that there's that much distinction between stew and soup. Anyway, so let's dish it up. Smells good. And again, it smells very much like what I'm used to, at least, for a beef stew. So that, now the pictures I've seen of this dish prepared by people that know what they're doing is seems to be a lot darker, looks a lot spicier, a lot. But for just using the quick and easy bouillon, this certainly seems like it's going to have a nice flavor to it. And we're not going to drag Bev on camera because, first of all, the gymnastics involved in getting past all the equipment that's behind the camera would be like almost impossible. And secondly, someone has to run the jib crane, so. Yeah, it's got a very much a beef stew, beef soup kind of beefy flavor about it. And even putting all 4 of the cubes in, it's not strongly spiced. It's very nice, full flavored, but it's not strong by any stretch of the imagination. So if you didn't know that was Kho Chay, you'd just think that was probably a regular beef stew. So certainly a nice, ingredient for making your beef stew with for only 69 cents. So, but for those of you who maybe are familiar with a more traditional version of this dish, hey, leave me a comment, tell me about it. I'd certainly like to know. But at any rate, thus far in our process through tasting all these different bouillons, they've all been quite pleasant. Nothing, exceptionally foreign about them or unusual. Very nice, full flavor. Seem to work good. No complaints, at least thus far. We'll see what happens next week, folks. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that the use of the jib crane and the kettle cam have helped a little bit in making this visually a little more appealing for you. Let me know what you think. Even if you want to just stop in and say hi, drop a comment down in the comment section. We love hearing from everybody. If you got questions or comments, I will do what I can to try and answer them. Hey, if you're new here, pick subscribe. Come along for the adventure. We got lots more to show you. And as always, thank you for watching.